To tell you a little bit about my relationship with Charlie Kirk. He changed my life by advocating for me, and I will be always eternally grateful for that. Charlie has completely changed our society in that way. He has shown young people that yes, socialism is harmful, yes, communism is harmful. Charlie Kirk had in his short time on this earth is much greater than almost any other human in modern day history.
The assassination of prominent American conservative commentator Charlie Kirk has shocked the entire nation. Throughout his life, Charlie dedicated himself to inspiring young Americans to engage in public affairs and politics, leaving a profound impact on countless youth. Our guest today is one of them, Gregory Lyakhov, a 17-year-old columnist from Long Island, New York. What makes his story remarkable is that he was once considered a failing student. It was only after meeting Charlie Kirk up close that he found new direction. So he regards Charlie as a mentor who changed the course of his life. Today on the Perspectives with Cathy, Gregory will share more untold stories and reflections, including how Charlie Kirk actually changed his life, what made Charlie so unique in his eyes, how this assassination will affect him personally and American society as a whole. And beyond that, we also discussed deeper questions. What is the fundamental issue in America reflected by this tragedy? Why are so many young Americans drawn to socialism and communism? And how has Gregory managed to stay clear-eyed about these ideologies? And what advice does he have for families? Please note that this interview was conducted one day after the assassination. Welcome, Gregory Lyakhov, to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So when you heard the news about his assassination, how did you feel? What went through your mind, at that moment?
Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit about my relationship with Charlie Kirk, for 16 years of my life, I had undiagnosed ADHD. And what that meant for me was that I was a failing student. I couldn't read and I couldn't write. Only last year did I finally start writing and reading after being diagnosed, and my entire life changed. I started listening to podcasts like The Charlie Kirk Show, and it inspired me to really go into politics and present my passion into the field that I love so much. And Charlie was a big part of it. Just recently, this summer, I had the opportunity to meet Charlie at a Turning Point USA event where I actually had a conversation. I had multiple conversations with him, but probably the most impactful one was the first one, which he actually recognized me for my writing, which was, to anyone, it's surreal, especially to someone like me who just started writing recently. And of course, after a lot of discourse, we had a lot of conversations, and even after the event, we kept in touch, and eventually he actually invited me to speak at a Turning Point USA event, at one of the biggest Turning Point USA events. I believe there was an estimated 7,000 people there. So you could only imagine how over the moon I was. This man changed my life, and this man changed the lives of so many students. And specifically, the impact that he had on me is so great that I can't even describe it. But really what we have to understand here, and what I felt in the moments after the shooting, is that we lost a hero. We lost a hero no matter if you agree with him or not. We lost a hero for civil discourse and for our for debating before violence. And that's what Charlie Kirk did. That's why he is so important to so many students like me.
So Gregory, when you talk to him in person, what kind of a person that Charlie Kirk is?
Yeah, definitely. So Charlie Kirk is by far the most humble person I have ever met in his role. He does nothing for himself. And I'll bring up an example. One time, after speaking for a straight 15 hours, basically taking no breaks, he was, tired out of his mind, and he still decided to take pictures with fans, to still have conversations with fans. And that's because he really cares. He cares about the younger generation. He's not doing it for publicity. He has publicity. He's not doing it for money. He already had money. What he is doing it for is to inspire the younger generation. And that's what I find truly noble about him. And I aspire to be just half as humble of a person as he is, because he never bragged. He never even made Turning Point USA look like an organization that discluded people. He was inclusive and he cared. And that's what's important. That's what I learned from Charlie Kirk.
Specifically, in what way Charlie Kirk changed your life?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And to that, I'm going to point to a conversation I had with him also at a Turning Point USA event. And that was regarding school choice. School choice is the idea that parents should decide where their money, their taxpayer dollars go to, whether it's a private school, a public school, or a charter school. And that's what Charlie Kirk is a big fan of. And I'll tell you why. It's very simple, because school choice works. It has been proven when we had school choice programs in every single liberal city, including New York, that education standards went up. I'll use Success Academy as an example. Success Academy, which is a completely public charter school with school choice programs, it has a literacy rate of around 98% and 83% pass rate on the standardized math exams, compared to a regular public school. For reading, a regular public school in the same exact neighborhood, in the same exact city, has a standardized literacy rate of around 83% and a standardized math rate of around 49%. So it is shocking the effect that school choice can have. And that's what he advocated for. He constantly advocated for education reform, for advocating for the students who don't have a voice like me. And that's what he made. That's how he changed my life. He changed my life by advocating for me, even when I didn't have a voice. And I will be always eternally grateful for that.
So actually now you do have a voice, and it's quite amazing actually. When I first met you just a few weeks ago at the Walkway event in Manhattan, right? You were actually an invited speaker. You appear to be such a great speaker with, independent thinking. Does that also relate to how Charlie Kirk had this influence on you?
Of course, when you look at his show, the thing that makes Charlie Kirk special is that he always chose discourse over violence, discourse over attack, and that is what he did for his entire life. He dedicated his life to showing children, students, and people all around the world that it is better to discuss than to shut down. And that's what I try doing in my everyday life. I try to discuss because it is clearly important. It is clearly what worked for Charlie Kirk, and that's why he was able to create such a big impact. And I aspire to be just half as good of a debater, half as good as a person who can facilitate discourse as Charlie Kirk was, because it was truly amazing. And he inspired me every day to work hard towards that goal, to get to a point where I actually can have conversations with people and understand what they're talking about, but also shake hands after. And I'll bring up an example of this to really specify what I mean. And a few weeks ago at a different walkaway rally with Brandon Straka, I actually bumped into a person who was an anti-Semite. He believed that Jews control the world, and that the intifadas, which are the global killing of Jews, were actually beneficial towards society. We went into this conversation with him yelling at me, and I exited the conversation with shaking his hand. And that is an example of a Charlie Kirk move, because Charlie Kirk does that. Charlie Kirk takes the people who disagree, who hate him, and make them respect him. That is what I respect about Charlie, and that's what I hope our entire world facilitates today.
Yeah, so it's so unfortunate that the shooting happened and Charlie did not make it. So what do you think this incident will have an impact on people like you and the United States as a whole?
Yeah, so Charlie Kirk's legacy will live on for the rest of American history. Charlie Kirk has created the biggest organization with the most amount of conservative students ever in history we have. And that is what I attest to him. And that's why he is such a strong supporter. I vow to continue carrying the torch of Charlie Kirk's mission to make sure that we can have civil discourse on college campuses, to make sure that children aren't afraid to speak their truth, and to make sure that children can defend their beliefs. And that's what Charlie Kirk's mission was. And that's why my mission is going to be. And that is really what I hope for thousands of people, Americans, and just people all around the world to embrace, because that was Charlie Kirk's message. He was the man of discourse, not the man of violence. And that is why I have ultimate respect for him. No matter what I disagree with him on, he truly knew how to have conversations. That is what we need more in this world.
Yeah, and Charlie Kirk once said the reason why he believes debating with people who have different stance is a healthy thing, because he said something like, if people stop to talk to each other, violence will happen. But unfortunately, yesterday, as he was holding this debate in the university campus, the violence happened against him. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, this is an exact example of just complete idiocracy here, because we have an attacker who is attacking a debater. I would understand more if you're attacking someone who is protesting. I would understand if you're attacking someone who is even a politician, but there's absolutely no reason on earth that you can justify attacking a debater for the act of debating. That is crazy. That is what our country is built on, civil discourse. And Charlie Kirk was practicing that, and he was attacked and killed and assassinated for that. And it is so unfortunate that we live in this, world, and we live in this country where something like this can happen, because truly just just 10 years ago, I truly believe that this would be unthinkable, to have one of the biggest conservative commentators in the history of the United States be assassinated for the act of debating. I mean, it's shocking. I have no words. I can't process this because it's just this shocking.
Do you think such, action would hinder people like you, people who like Charlie Kirk, who, usually will be in public events, will be talking to people? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. Last night I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep because I accidentally, not on purpose, watched the video of Charlie Kirk being shot. And all I could think about was, what if that was me? All I could think about was, what if that was, I don't know, Brandon Straka or Ben Shapiro or any other conservative commentators? Because it could be. And that is what scares me. It truly does. I don't think there's any way to go around it. I believe that we have to fight. We can't let anyone else other than our true beliefs win. And we have to do it in a way that is respectful and safe. And that is the essence of my argument. So really, I hope that the conservative field in general continues debating, continues their mission to educate students, to educate all of those adults around the United States. However, it's unfortunate that safety concerns are real now, and we do need to take more precautions. We do need to have more security. We may even need to end our open air debates and move indoors, which is much safer. So those are steps that I think we should be taking that are understandable but really horrific. And as a person who has somewhat of a following, but nothing compared to, let's say, Charlie Kirk, I am scared, and I should not be in this case. I just really shouldn't.
It's understandable. But so do you think you would be more careful with your, words, your speech?
Yeah, so my words and my speech are never going to change. I will always speak my mind no matter what. That is my core principle. It is not worth living if you can't speak your mind, because then you're not in a democratic society. You're in an authoritarian regime. However, will I plan on taking more precautionary measures? Yes, I plan on making sure that there is adequate security at events and so on. But to be honest, the no one expected someone from a roof to shoot Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk had security. So I don't even know what to think with that. I don't know what other steps can be taken, but the step that you can't take is to be scared and to give in, because that's what they want you to do.
So, some of the media, right, the legacy media, especially yesterday, made some comments which, actually a lot of people just feel so improper, and they apologize for it. But United States used to really have this tradition is agree to disagree, right? People won't take to violence against people who have a different stance with them. So what would you say to people on the other side, like
Yeah. So I first want to say that we have a crisis in our country, and you mentioned it right there. It is the fact that we are going away from our stance of agreeing to disagree and instead going towards a violent or absolutely dismissive stance. That is crazy. Our country is built on the fact that we can debate, we can have civil discourse, and our education system should be fostering it. We should have schools that are promoting civil discourse in politics, in abortion, in every single controversial topic, because that's why you go to school. You go to school to learn, not to just sit there because it's controversial. And really, that's who I blame. I blame the education system for this crisis because they are not giving our students the proper means to debate and to have a true level of civil discourse in classes, leading to a significantly lower rate of students actually debating or sharing their beliefs with their friends. And to the left-wing media that is currently, or that formerly was trying to politicize this, like MSNBC, for example, a guest said that made a completely ridiculous joke that a supporter shot Charlie Kirk in celebration. When we have that, I remember watching that clip yesterday. I started crying after seeing it. It was just so disgraceful and dehumanizing. But we need to come back to a society that is less polarized. We need to end this idea that the left is crazy, that the left are terrorists and that the right are Nazis. We need to end that. We need to come together and have civil discourse, have debate, have conversations with one another, because that's the only way society could ever get back to the way it should be.
So exactly what do you think you would do to carry the torch of Charlie Kirk, be able to reach, the state that you just described?
Yeah. So again, I think the number one issue in our country today is our education system. We have a system where almost 43% of students are failing, and we have, and this becomes a big issue because we have 47 or 43% of students in New York City facing chronic absenteeism, meaning that they're not attending school for more than I believe it's 85% of the year. So they're missing around 15% of the year. We have a crisis on our hands with that. We have to get our students back in school. We have to get our students back in schools that are actually quality, because we also have a crisis, not in just New York State, but all around the country, where students are failing at levels never seen before. Student attention spans are depleting at levels never seen before. And this needs to be fixed immediately. That's where I would start. I would start at the education systems, the schools. I would hire professors that are both left and right leaning, and I will encourage civil discourse. That's what I would do if I was in the shoes of any position, any politician. That's what I would encourage, because that's the only way we can finally get back to a society where civil discourse is important.
Gregory, you mentioned you were diagnosed of ADHD. Just curious, if you don't mind to sharing why it took so many years, 16 years, for you to be diagnosed. Is that because of the school or because of the family or what?
That is a wonderful question, and I again blame the education system for that. I go to a wonderful school. It is truly one of the best schools, I think, in this country. However, it's not an issue with the specific school, but rather the entire system. You see, my ADHD diagnosis was actually a term. It's not used anymore, but this is what they called it ever since, I believe, 1991, which is just attention deficit disorder, meaning that the hyperactivity aspect was not really there. So it was not obvious, unless you were learning with me or studying with me, that I actually had a chronic learning disability. And that is what the school failed to catch. We have seen, though, that charter schools, school choice programs, they are much better at catching these things, and they're much better at catching learning disabilities. If I attended a charter school or a school choice program from the very beginning of my education career, there is a very likely chance that I would have never had to deal with the suffering I did for 16 years. But that is besides the point. My point is that our education system is really collapsing. We have a teacher cartel union which are completely running the system, we pay over $42,000 per year per student in New York State, which is more than the average median income of Flint, Michigan, and we still have faulty education standards. So we need to fix this. We need to call on our officials to fix this, and we need to end the ridiculous identity politics in schools and actually work on saving our education system.
Young people like you, who already been inspired by Charlie Kirk, but after these incidents, what do you think, the young people should do so that you can carry on the torch?
Definitely. So I want to say first that from my very little experience in politics for the last year and my very little experience for the field, I have discovered that unless you are going to die without it, and unless you are truly extremely passionate about it, you should not do it, because it is extremely difficult, it is extremely corrupt, it is extremely time consuming, and really the only way to be successful in it is if you have full passion. So I encourage those who have full passion to understand that this is the way we live. We will always have situations where people are being shot and killed for no apparent reason. We are always going to have situations that are scary, but we cannot give into those. And for those who may not be as passionate as politics as I do, I recommend that you see the true the true level that politics holds in your everyday lives, because the truth is that decisions made by the Trump administration, by Cathy Hochul or any other legislative body, decisions made by them, they impact each and every one of your lives. And if you start noticing the true impacts, and if you start researching about them, you are destined to find a path where, even if you're scared to speak out, which is okay, you will yourself be a part of a group of people who will actually contribute to society and politics. And that's my message. My message is that you don't have to speak out. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to be on camera 24/7 talking about your political beliefs, because it is highly stressful. But you do have to contribute to society, and you do have to make sure that society is becoming a better and better place. And the only way to do that is to get involved.
Very well said. So yeah, you just mentioned you haven't really got sleep, right? For 24 hours. You really do have the passion.
Yes, I have unfortunately not slept in more than 24 hours now, but it's been a pretty crazy. I mean, I don't even hear myself speaking right now, so I hope this interview is going well. But
yeah, well, you're doing well. I think our audience will appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
If we can just take the opportunity just to talk a little bit more about your background, because I think people kind of nicely surprised by you, like such a young, only 17-year-old, but very eloquent and have a very good understanding of socialism, communism, which a lot of Americans don't really understand. So can you just,
Sure.
tell our audience?
Yeah. So this ties in greatly with Charlie Kirk, because the truth is that Charlie Kirk was a defender of truth, and everything I'm going to tell you is the truth about communism and socialism. So firstly, I want to start off with my origins. My parents' origins, which they grew up in the USSR, or the former Soviet Union. My father grew up in Moscow and my mother grew up in Kiev, once very close cities, now not so much. But they grew up in a socialist state, in communist rule. And what I mean by that is that there is a misconception that the USSR was communism. No, it was socialism. It was a self-described socialist state. And why that is such a big threat is because socialism is what Mamdani and all of these other crazy Democrat socialists want to bring to the United States. So they're not even denying that they want to bring the type of socialism my parents lived through, where they stood in bread lines to get food. They didn't have access to certain goods because it just wasn't available for them because of shortages, where there were hunger strikes, where there were significant issues in normal day-to-day life, like, I don't know, going to the subway station and, transportation. So in a communist society and in a socialist society, and I'm going to use those words simultaneously because in history we have seen that they are simultaneous. Every single communist nation is really socialist, and there was no such thing as a purely communist nation, and that makes sense. And so to refer back to my original point, every communist nation, every socialist nation has failed. And I could guarantee you that if you send one person back to the Moscow of the 1970s, or if you send one person back to Cuba or any of the other socialist countries, they are going to want to come back to the United States. Look, capitalism is not perfect. There's a lot of flaws in our system. There's a lot of irregularities and a lot of people are being treated unfairly, but it is by far the best economic system we have been able to develop yet. And until you show me that socialism actually works, which it doesn't, then there is no way that we can implement it in the biggest city in the United States.
So were you born here?
Yes, I was born here. My parents moved here right before the collapse of the USSR.
It sounds like your parents actually talked to you about what happened, right, in the USSR.
Of course, and it doesn't take much research to realize that there is very little backing to say that people in the USSR lived good, because that's not true. People in the USSR did not live good. People in communist China right now, they are not living the lives we live, and that is a common misconception that we need to fix. And to be honest, the big question is why? Why are New Yorkers falling for these socialist traps?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're desperate. They're desperate for a new economic system because this one has been failing them. And rather than the actual economic system failing them, they have to understand that society has been failing them and the values they hold near and dear are the core of the issue. I'm going to reference a study that has been recently released in which in which men and women on both sides of the aisle rank marriage and having kids as one of their last most important values in their lives. They rank having financial stability, emotional stability, and all other things higher than marriage or having kids. And that is a core issue of our society. We should have marriage, having kids, developing a family as one of the first things on our list, on our to-do list, and on our values list. It should be the most important thing, not the least important thing in a society. And currently, this really explains why people are doing so bad, because they're not happy with the current system. And the society in general, the radical left is failing them even more.
Yeah, it obviously raised to even bigger question. But maybe we can, find another time to talk about more in depth. But I'm just wondering because after that event, I actually talked to a few college students, and one of the questions they mentioned is what you just said. They said, Mondani is a socialist, but it's not communist. They don't really, differentiate that.
Yeah.
They actually differentiate that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll respond because I'll respond to that comment. And my response is very simple. Read the Democratic Socialists of America Charter, because there is where it says they want to seize the means of production. There's where it says they want to remove CCTV cameras, armed guards, police officers from schools and neighborhoods alike. There is where it says that they want to end the prosecuting of misdemeanor crimes. And when we have the Democrat Socialists of America Charter having all of these ideas in it, look, call it communism, call it socialism. At the end of the day, it is going to be bad for New York City, okay? And that is what we need to settle. And to respond directly, though, of whether socialism is communism, the answer is no. Socialism and communism are not the same in a theoretical world. However, in a practical, today's world, socialism and communism have always been the same, and we have seen that time and time again. Every single communist country has been a socialist state, and there has never been a true communist model ever, because it's impossible. We don't live in a perfect society. That's what people need to understand.
When media ask him, how do you define you as a democratic socialist? He would quote Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. He said, call it Democrats, call it socialists. There should be a better way to distribute wealth. So what would you respond to him?
Look, there should be a better way to distribute wealth, and there should be a better way to have less homeless people, less people living in poverty, and capitalism has provided that better way. Right now in American society, we have the highest quality of life in the history of American society. Whether it is true that there is a big gap between the rich and the poor, but don't look at the gap, look at how well the poor are doing, and the poor are doing much better than they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and beyond. And that's what we should be looking at. Saying that communism or socialism or whatever your system is that wants to defund the police and seize the means of production and end our education systems, saying that that is the solution to our problems is very far-fetched. And really, I can't believe that people are falling for it.
So how do you think Charlie Kirk's his understanding of those subjects?
Yeah, Charlie understood those subjects very well, and Charlie has completely changed our society in that way. He has shown young people that yes, socialism is harmful, yes, communism is harmful, and that's what we need more. Look, Charlie came from a family that wasn't necessarily wealthy. He lived in a Chicago suburb for his entire childhood. He never was really exposed to any socialist ideals or communist ideals, but he still himself understands that communism, socialism are bad. That is the core, that is the very minimum. Just 5 years ago, if we brought up the name socialist or democratic socialist, you would think you were crazy for doing that. And now we are normalizing it. That's the scary part. That's what Mamdani doesn't understand. And that's what everyone doesn't understand, because it doesn't start with Mamdani. It doesn't end with Mamdani. It starts with Mamdani. We have seen that Mamdani is in power, or if he would be potentially mayor in the November election, and if he gains power, then he does not have many things he can do. Sure, he can change the police officers. Sure, he can change the rent codes. But at the end of the day, it's what he normalizes that's going to be the threat. He will normalize a system of government where socialism is okay, where relying on welfare programs for the rest of your life is beneficial. And that's what the concern is here.
Yeah. So, how do you think Charlie Kirk's through his understanding and through his public speaking and events to change young people's perspective on this concept?
Yeah, definitely. So Charlie Kirk again dedicated his life to having a free society that can have civil discourse. That is what he did. He spent every single day debating people. He spent every single day listening to people of the other side. And that's what we need to value. We need to value listening to others. You can hate Zorhan Mamdani. You can hate, Curtis Sliwa. But at the end of the day, if you don't listen to them, if you don't hear them out, then we're never going to have a balanced society. That's what Charlie Kirk did. That's why he was so effective of it, and that's why millions of students are now left mourning after his death.
Are you hopeful that young people in the United States, more of them would come to have a better understanding of the concepts of socialism, communism, capitalism? And are you hopeful that the United States, will going for a better direction?
Look, I don't want to lie to you and say that I am 100% hopeful and that I think that my generation is going to be the new generation, because I don't know. I think that the only way to get out of this loop is, once again, to fix our education system, which no one is talking about right now. Only Charlie Kirk was talking about education reform. Ben Shapiro was talking about education reform. No politicians are talking about it, though. And that's the issue. So to that question, I do think we have hope. I don't think we're lost. I think that America is truly and has always been the greatest country ever, with the best opportunity, and it's uncomparable to any other country on earth. However, the values that the Generation Z are embracing currently, and the things that they're doing, the people that they're voting for, they are anti-American. They are going against the fundamental values of our society. That should be a concern.
Yeah. So do you have any other words to say to our audience? And actually, in my Chinese channel, a lot of Chinese, people came from China, right? The communist China, and some are still living there. So what's your message to them?
Definitely. Look, communism is horrible and socialism is horrible. If we have it in New York City, it will be bad. It will not be like communist China. It will not be like the USSR, but it will be bad because it will spread. It will start with Mamdani, then go to another mayor in Los Angeles, then go to another mayor in Miami, all the way up till the White House. And that is a concern. We have to stop the spread now. That is what we should be focusing on. And that is what I encourage everyone watching this to do, whether it's posting about it, whether it's actually getting out and casting your vote. We need to stop this now. And there's no other way to do it other than going out on the streets and advocating for what we believe is right.
Quite a few of our Chinese American parents, they found all of a sudden that their children, being schooled, right, in public school or some other schools, have a lack of understanding of socialism, communism, and as you can imagine, and then they don't really talk to they disagree with their parents, and the parents don't know what to do. So, what's your suggestion to parents?
Well, look, only 28 states in the United States require economics to be a factor in your graduation in K through 12 education, and that is shocking. Economics, business, which is the number one most taken major in college and heavily relies on economics, is apparently disregarded in our education system, and that's an issue. So to the parents that are concerned, this is what I would say. Number one, advocate for change, advocate for school choice, advocate for your taxpayer dollars to go to a more efficient, more effective, and better learning environment for your children. That's number one. But number two is to make sure that your children are hearing the other side. We have to have a society where people are debating, where people are questioning each other. And even if you fundamentally disagree with your child, debate them on it. Have a conversation, because that is the only way we can fix our society's polarization issue.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, because your parents came from USSR, right? And they don't understand about communism, and they talk to you about that. But some of our Chinese American parents, they probably did not really mention those the past life in China to their children, because they think that might be better, but it turned out not to be so. So in that regard, what's your suggestion?
Tell the stories of your generation and tell the stories of your kind. That is the most important part of all of this. Look, I believe it was my great grandfather or great grandfather who was alive at the time of the rise of the Communist Party. He was a supporter of the Communist Party, not because he was a communist, but because he was Jewish, and in the USSR or in Russia, they persecuted Jews, killed them, and forbade them from practicing their religion. So don't be ashamed just because your ancestors thought one way, or just because the people that you are associated with or your nationality, just because they think one way. It is okay. The most important thing is to, though, talk about change and to reference the bad with the good. Reference what went wrong. Tell your children about what went wrong. Tell them about your struggles, because that is the only way we can prevent any other those struggles from taking place in our generation.
Any other last words?
My last words would probably be this. Look, we are living in a very stressful time right now where children in general are struggling in mental health, in education, in physical health, in getting out of their beds in the morning. And the real reason why they are struggling is not because of an issue that is created, or not because of a systemic issue. It is more because of a cultural, social issue. We have to instill discipline in children, and we have to make sure that they are excited to learn. They are interested in what they are learning. They're not just learning for the sake of getting a good grade, but they're learning for the sake of learning. That is the most important part. And while it's much easier said than done, I encourage every parent to make sure that their children are really there. It's one thing to assign math homework, for a teacher to assign math homework for their students to complete using AI generated notes. It's another thing for a teacher to assign math homework and for students to genuinely get a few answers wrong, but succeed and finish the math homework themselves. And the latter is significantly better. And that is really what I want to emphasize here, because we need to instill a education system with our students where they are prioritized. And right now, that is just not happening.
Yeah. In the last word about, Charlie, what happened to Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, I am shocked. I am terrified to be a person in this field, and I am terrified to be a American citizen right now because it is scary. However, I encourage everyone who is currently in politics, everyone who's just like me, to continue fighting, because you can give in, but that would let the other side win. And your values are just as important as every other aspect of your life. So uphold your values, make sure that you are fighting safely and peacefully and using rhetoric like Charlie Kirk did, and make sure you are spreading good in the world. That's what we need more. And look, this is a reminder. I truly believe that this is a reminder that people can live up to the age of 90, or people could live up to the age of 31 like Charlie Kirk did. But the impact that Charlie Kirk had in his short time on this earth is much greater than almost any other human in modern day history. And the reason I say that is because he targeted the youth. He helped the youth, and not enough people are doing that.
Yeah, very well said. Well, thank you so much, Gregory, for
Thank you.
sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
The assassination of Charlie Kirk has deeply shaken America. Many focus on the brutality of the act itself, but through Gregory's story, we see not only a tragedy, but also the continuation of a spirit. Gregory was once dismissed as a failing student, yet through his encounter with Charlie Kirk, he found direction, became a young columnist, and now vows to continue Charlie's unfinished mission. This mission is not about power or profit, but about preserving public dialogue, replacing violence with debate, replacing violence with debate, and replacing division with communication. Gregory also reminds us of the challenge facing America's younger generation. Why do socialist and communist ideas appeal to some of them? He points to failure in education, social anxieties, and the gaps in family communications. Gregory also reminds us of the challenges facing America's younger generation. Why do socialists and communists' ideas appeal to some? He points to failure in education, social anxieties, and the gaps in family communication. And for families, his advice is very clear. Share your real stories with your children and don't shy away from debates. For it is through dialogue and honest exchange that values are clarified and the beliefs are passed on. Charlie Kirk's life was cut short at 31, but his spirit lives on. It has already found new expression in young people like Gregory. Perhaps this is what we must all reflect on. In an age of division and polarization, will we choose, as Charlie did, words instead of violence, dialogue instead of hate? This is Perspectives with Cathy Zhang. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.